Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our panel on the theatrical window, tools and strategies for audience development. My name is Vicky Brown, and I'm the Senior Sales and Distribution Exec at the BFI. For those needing a visual description, I am a woman of East Asian origin. I have dark brown hair and have sometimes been described as horizontally challenged, but that's for you to decide. So I wanted to kick off by saying, every time I come to Cannes, I do feel it's a real privilege to be here, to be reminded of just how vital and dynamic independent film is. But I would say for every red carpet moment, 5-star review, there are conversations happening out there across sales, distribution, exhibition about, we can't take any of this, and most importantly, audiences for granted. We're living in this post-pandemic world now, and with the costs are rising, people's attentions are divided. Are we asking a lot for people to leave the comfort of their own home, sit in the dark with strangers for 2 hours, and give a film their undivided attention? So how do we make sure more people are saying yes? So I'm joined today by 3 very experienced guests who are each tackling that question from a different angle. So over the next hour, I hope we can really get under the skin of what's actually keeping audiences away, and more importantly, how do we bring them back? So I'm going to invite my panelists to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about their organizations and what they do.
Hi there, I'm MADDY PROBST. I'm the head of film at Watershed in Bristol in the UK. We're a 3-screen cinema, you can see up there. Based in the harbour side in Bristol, and we also run an immersive gallery downstairs called Undershed. We've been doing this for about a year, and we also still screen film on film. We host festivals like Encounters that are dedicated to new talent, so if there's any new short filmmakers in the room, that's a good festival to get in touch. The other end of the spectrum, we've been running a festival called Cinema Rediscovered, which has been now running for 10 years, which is looking at restorations, the past of cinema. Is this working? There we go. In the kind of environment that we find ourselves in, context where there's a lot of different things that people can enjoy, we're having to work much harder, eventizing. So you can see here some examples. Big party around the moment, and we work in partnership as well with lots of organizations. We screen a lot of local work as well. Here we've got The Rose of Nevada, Mark Jenkins, who's a Southwest-based filmmaker that we champion, and him coming to the venue made a huge difference. And then finally, we like to describe ourselves as a values-led organization. We make a point of trying to be accessible. We do this through partnership working. Here's an example of deaf conversations about cinema, which I can expand on a little bit later. As well as being a cinema, we also are the Film Hub lead organisation for the Southwest. This is part of the BFI's Film Audience Network, and that's helping other cinemas, festivals, pop-ups thrive in the region, as well as helping short filmmakers and early development. So I'll hand over to you.
Yes. Thank you. Maybe I'll get the clicker. Thank you. So I'm very happy to be there. I'm Thierry DELPIT. I am the founder and the president of Cinesociety. I'm a white man of 48 years old. I have glasses, and I think it's fair to say that I have white hair. We have been building Cinesociety and launching Cinesociety in 2020, in March 2020, just in time for COVID. So it was really the perfect timing to launch a new company in the cinema industry, just when the theaters were closing for many months. What we went from is seeing that the awareness of film release was really going down years after years, and of course, it has been proven right even more after COVID. In France, there's a measure saying that only 15% of cinema-goers, not the whole French people, but cinema-goers are aware of the film release that are released the week after. So there is really an issue in having people know that what will be released in cinema. The number of people going to the movies is still around the same every year. It's around 40 million people. So people are still going to the cinema, but less and less. So there is really an issue in working on the awareness of the release. So we are building solutions and digital solutions to help distributors and exhibitors work together, because we really think that the exhibitor is the best place, and all the digital channels are the best, one of the best tools to raise awareness of the movies and to reach the local communities. So we are actually proposing, yes, two solutions. The first one, which is called Cinesociety Social, which on one hand helps exhibitors to run their social networks with very simple tools to help them publish content. We build content for them. We gather every promotional content from distributors. And on the other hand, the distributors can access the social networks of the exhibitors to work on the awareness of their release many months before the release, and to have, for example, the trailer when it is released nationwide. Can be published on every cinema we work with. So it's the first solution. And the other one, which is Cinesociety data, where we gather and mutualize the ticketing data from every theaters we work with. And then we build audiences, and very targeted audiences for distributors, so they can work on their marketing campaigns on a very targeted and segmented audience, so which proves to be really more efficient. So of course we'll come back on that afterwards, so I can give you the floor. Sorry, this is the one you need.
Thank you very much. So my name is SENEIT DEBESE. I am an African-German person, and I think the most interesting part about me is my earrings. So I have golden earrings with the shape of Africa, and I'm wearing a red suit. So I'm the founder of a company called Greta and Starks, and we make cinema. Mostly cinema, but also distribution channels after cinema, accessible to blind, deaf, and audiences with hearing devices. So I gathered some latest articles for you, just to show, like, we have been in the market for 14 years, and still there is a very big gap we can together fill and give access to cinema. For instance, here you see an article in the BBC where a lady, she had to travel 3 hours to go to a cinema which the movies were accessible. And I think this is not what we want. And then there's an audio.
We all know when you're blind and you go to the movies, you get the audio description headset and you pray to God it frickin' works, because we know 50% of the time it's not going to. We go to the movies and what do you know? Movie starts, it doesn't work. So the moment you find out it doesn't work is once the movie has already begun.
Yeah. So, and in total, in all of Europe, it's 150 million people who are either deaf or blind or are hearing users of hearing devices. So it's really a big target group we can make offers to. And so in my company, the app we produced is called Greta. We offer access to cinemas with audio description for blind people or visually impaired people, subtitles for people with hearing loss, or sound amplification for people with hearing devices. But we also can play sign language videos. And especially the target group with hearing devices is really a big target group. And at this moment, maybe people feel not comfortable to go to cinema because they cannot hear the dialogue very well. So with our app, they get the dialogues, only the dialogues directly to their hearing devices, so they feel more comfortable. So we haven't heavily promoted it in our app, but already 35% are using this because it's new. We started with audio description. And so I think there's really a market which you can tap into with existing material already. Yeah, so I'm very happy to be here on this panel with you. The last slide. I just want to share with you that we operate in several markets across Europe and some other territories.
Thank you very much. And a reminder that I know you probably will have lots of questions. We will open it up to audiences towards the end, so save your questions for them. Maddie, I'm going to kick off with you. You're very much at the coalface of exhibition. So I was curious to know, how well do you know who's actually coming through the door at Watershed? And are there any kind of particular audiences that you feel have historically stayed away?
Yes, I'll just start with my description because I forgot. So I'm an experienced white woman with a khaki top and some glasses and some jeans. Yeah, I mean, I think traditionally we've done really well with the kind of core cinephile audience in the past. I think after COVID, this kind of shifted somewhat. Our audience is getting younger, which is really great for an independent cinema. We're seeing a real shift, especially with the repertoire cinema. Really young people coming through the doors, which is a surprise. Sometimes film on film can help kind of also activate that interest. So we've been showing kind of newer films like Begonia, and showing them on film, and we're seeing a kind of like up to 50% young audiences turning up for those things. There are barriers to engagement. I think Bristol is a very divided city with issues around transport. So whilst parts of Bristol are accessing our cinema and postcodes that are around our venue are translating into audiences, it's more of a challenge with some areas that are more disconnected. And there's lots of layers to that, which are primarily socioeconomic reasons. But we're trying to work really hard to sort of encourage those people to engage with us through thinking about transport, thinking about new types of incentives to try us. We've got a whole scheme over the next 3 years that's going to be looking at specific postcodes that we're not reaching. We do look at data in a really, really granular way. So we've got, we've got a head of data. We've invested in that. Our team is getting more and more savvy with like how to analyze that data in a very quick way. So we've created dashboards so we can see what's going on. We're looking at audience demographics, we're looking at surveys as well, but also because we're an independent, we're actually there, we're on site, we're meeting the customers, we're seeing them, we know who's coming in, so we're kind of uniquely placed in that respect to sort of do very targeted, localized comms.
Speaking of data, it's probably a good time to bring Thierry in. I think central to what Cinesociety does, it tackles sort of who distributors think is actually in the room versus who they're trying to target. Have you ever been surprised by a campaign about who a distributor initially is trying to target versus the people that are actually buying tickets to that film?
Yes, it's often not really often, but it's the case. We have two types of types of examples to say. It can be often the case that a distributor wants to reach a particular audience. For example, in the French movie L'Amour Ouf, which was in Cannes last year, I think, or 2 years ago, where they thought they will reach rather middle-aged or old people, and then they have fully redirected their marketing campaigns to young audiences because they've seen that this particular part of the audience reacts a lot more to the cast and the story. And the thing which impressed me more is that we have distributors that, after the release of a movie, was really thinking that the audience of this movie were old people, and that they are, and we have shown them weeks after weeks that it was not the case, but he was still believing, just from his instinct, that the audience was quite old. And I have to say I'm quite impressed of what you are saying, where the work we are doing in data with the head of data and things like that, because for almost all exhibitors in France, they don't work on that at all. They don't look at their data. They think that just being in the hall of their theater, they know who is there and who is going to watch the movie. So it's very, I'm really impressed of when you're doing on this particular points. But what we do, we have some data on the socio-demographics of the, but what we gather, because it's on a voluntary basis that people in the cinema are just saying, this is my date of birth, my gender and things like that. So it's almost 30% of the data we collect, where we have this amount of data. But what we get, which is particularly interesting, is connecting the dots between the films that people are seeing, which is particularly interesting, saying, well, people which have gone to see, for example, romance, well, they have been interested in this thriller for one reason or another, maybe the cast or something like that. So you can connect the dots, and it's particularly interesting to activate the data, saying okay, to get an audience for these particular movies, we will reach people that have seen these particular titles before.
I wanted to follow up. You mentioned the data you collected through online ticket purchases, and I'm curious to know whether, does that mean that this data-driven audience development is currently benefiting the sort of more digitally advanced venues, maybe more so than the ones that actually could do with the help? How do you track the kind of walk-in and walk-up transactions?
Well, we also gather part of the walking when they have subscription system or loyalty schemes, which is very interesting because it's very complementary from the audience of online sales, which is younger and often more used for more bigger titles or special events or things like that, where there has loyalty, people from loyalty programs are more older people with. So we are also gathering, but it's of course a minority of the data we get. So in fact, I think what we are trying to do is to because we work with independent cinemas, the big circuits in France have their own system, and they are the theaters that are really more advanced in this digital. For example, Pathé is having almost in France 70% of online sales, whereas the cinema we work with are around 20%. So what we do is trying to help these independent cinemas to bridge the gap and to have their audience also targeted by distributors, and that the marketing budget of distributors is not only targeted to the audience of the big major chains. And we are helping the cinemas to raise their online sales, but it's not very easy because for many exhibitors it's just another sales channel, the online. It's not a tool, and we have to explain to them how they will benefit from this data, working themselves on it, and how it will be very useful for the distributors. But it's not an easy journey to
I was just going to jump in about loyalty cards, because that's something that we've invested a lot of thinking around. We launched a membership card last year after kind of stopping it because we had a loyalty scheme which wasn't working for us so well. Membership card, which is basically £15 a year, we've gone up to £20 a year, and you get 15% off cinema tickets. And what's been interesting is even within a year we've had, we've got over 2,000 members now. We can track across the films they're watching, as well as the discounts they're kind of claiming. And it was quite interesting to review some of that data, like zooming out of individual films, just looking at it more globally for us. Just within a year, we've noticed that the Club Shed members come to the cinema 3 to 4 times a year. The non-Club Shed members come to the cinema 2 times a year. So we're already seeing like that dial shift a little bit. And we're now really interested in introducing more measures to kind of really prompt those Club Shedders to come to see more discovery titles. They're watching a lot of rep. We're finding out lots of really interesting data about what they're up to. And our main focus, in a way, is kind of looking at our whole customer base on a kind of frequency and recency basis. So we just have reorganized our whole customer database in that way. So we can see, like, how can we shift the dial a tiny bit? If we can get someone to come twice or 3 times, And with our frequent users, if we can just get them to spend a bit more money in the bar, that's really starting to make a difference.
It's really interesting to hear, and the idea of audiences coming back. I was particularly keen to bring in SENEIT at this point. In terms of the Greta app, it was really interesting to hear stories about someone that had to go travel 3 hours to be able to see something accessible. It'd be good to understand in terms of what prompted you to develop the app. And to Maddie's point of people coming back, have you noticed that because of Greta, that it's not just one-off screenings they're going to, but it is allowing these audiences to continue to return?
Thank you for this question. I was working as a distributor actually in the cinema industry, and then I wanted to become a very famous director for documentaries, and I shot a documentary about a blind girl, and then I realized she could do everything. She was independent, she was doing an apprenticeship and everything, but she told me that she does not enjoy to go to cinema very much because someone has to tell her what is happening. And because I was a distributor, I was like, okay, but it's the 21st century in Germany, people can fly to the moon. Why isn't it possible that people can access cinema individually in all of Germany? And from this idea, somehow I made myself responsible to find a solution for that. So that's how it started. And then when we developed the application, we also thought of other target groups or of other people potentially wanting to go to cinema. And then we also developed subtitles and sound amplification, things like this. But what we saw is there's a lot of things going on. Once you give access to these communities, for instance, today we have here Barbara Fickert. She's in Germany, she's called the Kinoblindgänger. That means I cannot translate this in English, but she's an influencer, she's an ambassador, she's an audio description and subtitles manufacturer, producer, and she advocates totally for accessibility in cinema in Germany, but now she's here to advocate for this also in all of Europe. Barbara, maybe you want to say hi very briefly? Shall I give you the microphone? Sorry, this is very interactive, as you can see. You want to say something?
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm here with my project. It's Heroes for All, accessible film version. How does it work? And we produced a video, 9 minutes, animated, because in Germany, the students are very want to do their films accessible for everybody, but they have no idea how to do it. And we have also produced we dubbed it in English, I say like that. It's an English version. And if you are interested, you can talk to me after that panel. That would be very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, but to answer sorry, very briefly to answer your question. So we also gather all the data anonymously, but we see how many people access which movies. And what is interesting is that the same amount of people are accessing the movies with subtitles or with audio description. That was very interesting because we thought, okay, this title could be more for people using audio description. And then what we also saw is that once people get back to cinema, they go to cinema more often than the general audience. And then also they are very happy about being able, and then we get many emails from people saying, I went to cinema yesterday with my husband, my child, or whoever, and it was such an amazing experience. Thank you for making me part of the cinema experience again. So I think there's really a huge gap for you.
Yeah, no, it's really great to hear about early awareness with filmmakers to think about access when they're making work, because as a cinema, one of the challenges is a lot of films that we get distributed don't actually have accessible materials. And we know as a cinema we want to be accessible, but it's just not feasible for us to, we do sometimes, but to commission our own subtitles for just a standalone venue. So it's really important that production, sales agents, distributors really understand that if you create good assets at the beginning, then it makes it so much easier for the rest of the chain. I think it's good to talk about access. It's also really important to talk about engagement. So we had an agent of change. It was an Arts Council funded program, which put us, placed a kind of activist, actor from the deaf community to spend some time with us as an organization and kind of challenge us on what the work we were doing. And it's been an absolute game changer for us because we were thinking of it more as access, but actually what he was saying is access is one thing, but what about the events? I want to be part of the events. We want to be able to have conversations. So we set up, with Dave Ellington, a program called Deaf Conversations About Cinema, which is essentially a meet-up in the cafe bar, which is open to deaf and hearing customers, and it's a really lively chat. Someone from our team, not necessarily the programmer, but anyone from our team introduces the screening and hosts the session in the bar. And it is that thing about, you know, those communities have been left out of cinemas for a very, very long time. So we're having to do the work. You know, everyone got excited, I think, in the commercial sector about the idea of, like, there's so many deaf people, but actually, if you haven't been looking after them for all those years, you need to really think about that engagement as well.
Making cinema more accessible feels like a complete no-brainer, but I'd be curious from your perspective and yours whether you faced any kind of resistance from distributors, from exhibitors, or maybe even audiences themselves. You know, I'm curious, especially with the Greta app, whether the idea of a second screen may, you know, for some people kind of undermine that communal experience. Have either of you faced any kind of resistance with introducing access?
Well, I mean, I can say that. I think there are, on descriptive subtitles, there's very different views on it from our customers. You know, some people find it really distracting, and sometimes it's people with other disabilities, like around the neurodiversity spectrum, that it's too much information to have the sounds and all the descriptions. Other people love it, even people that are not deaf. You know, there's a whole new generation of young people growing up with subtitles, watching subtitles at home, so they don't find it so distracting. So we're finding, as a cinema, we're having to sort of work with our audience to, I don't want to use the word educate, but have the conversation about, we want to be more accessible. Do you want to come with us on that journey, and how can we do it? And then we're also looking at alternatives like glasses, the watch, I can't remember the exact name of it, watch glasses. We've done a trial. I think there's still a way to go, but we're really interested in also exploring that side of things. Although from, the deaf communities, there's different views on that. We should probably be adapting our own environment rather than asking people to kind of wear glasses. So it's a very live debate.
So yeah, I can talk for hours about that, but to keep it again very briefly, and then we should talk too, because I think we could build synergies in French cinema. But for deaf people from the deaf community, we know they want to have subtitles on the screen. And we know that filmmakers and audiences think they would be disturbing. So this is as you said, the debate going on. So we provide subtitles on the second screen, and then also we are working on smart glasses. So this could be like a workaround solution, but the best solution would be to have subtitles on the screen for the deaf community. So maybe we can consider this in a global world. This would be a paradigm shift, I think. For the blind community, you won't even realize that they are using audio description, because they have it in one ear, and then they can put away their smartphone, and then you won't even realize that there are blind people, maybe only if you see their devices. So blind people or people using sound amplification is kind of invisible, and for the subtitles, as I said, second screen or smart glasses. And as Barbara was saying, there's a lot going on. In the UK, there's a lot going on, and French, in Germany. And the filmmaker community in general is invited. We invite you to educate yourself a little bit more about what kind of files you need to make your movies barrier-free, how easy this is possible, and then how easily you can access this other audiences. And as I said, as a filmmaker, when you make movies, you want people to say, I'm so glad that I could enjoy this movie. And this is happening with these audiences. Sorry, I think I'm a commercial person.
We spoke a bit earlier in terms when we're talking about that, that missing audience, that lost audience. There's a lot of conversations about, and we brought it up earlier, younger audiences. There is the assumption that we've perhaps lost young people to short-form content. They're spending all their time on social media. Do you think there is truth in that assumption, or do you perhaps think it's coming from an industry that maybe is letting itself off the hook for not being innovative enough in trying to reach them from your different perspectives?
Well, I think it's interesting. There's been a couple of bits of research that have come out recently. One from Fandango, and the BFI have just published a piece of research on the use of small screens versus other ways of watching and so on. And it's interesting to see that in the various pieces, The Guardian also ran a sort of focus group, and there's a lot of comments from younger audiences about really enjoying being quiet, being in a cinema for a few hours, like switching everything off, immersing themselves in that experience. And I think that's a shift again. The distractions are there, and they're consuming films in all sorts of ways, and maybe not films, more like TikToks, YouTube clips, and so on. But I think it's also great to see that return to like an experience and an experience that they can share with their friends as well, and socialize around that moment, which I think is quite interesting.
Sherry, what is the data showing for you?
Well, in fact, I think your question is really interesting, because what the data shows is that young people are still going to the cinema, and it's and they are still the age groups that is really the more overrepresented in the cinema audience regarding their part in the overall population. So the thing is, they are still going to movies, but they are going less times, and they are more focused on big titles over marketed contents, for example. So for us, really, the issue is to get them go more often to the theater and discover more various kind of movies. So they still, and I totally agree with you, they still love the theatrical experience, the fact that you have you live the experience on a big screen with other people, with your friends, away from your phone and things like that. But you have to convince them to come to see every kind of content and to come more often.
Yeah, and I think advertising is absolutely key. We use a lot of the energy within our own organisation. Like with the moment, the picture I showed, that was like a member of our marketing team, Isla, that decided to do this. We were showing the film like 3 weeks off date, something like that. I was a bit worried because it didn't do very well in the UK, but we packed the whole place out. It was a whole takeover. We have a photo booth. People would which was themed around the whole moment. And the people are looking for special experiences and memorable experiences, which is what we can do in a space like a cinema, but a pop-up festival as well. Also, like working hard to build loyalty and different ways of getting that audience in. We've set up, with the support of the BFI Audience Fund, we've set up a young film club, and that's been really great. So it's kind of hosted by young curators, programmers, young people that are around the building, and they put on a special event. The main thing they want is snacks. We do great nachos. And they chat about the films, and I've been really surprised because they kind of choose the next film as well. They've been choosing they made quite brave choices. So for us, it's made us think about like not making assumptions as well about programming for young people, that they're looking for quite challenging content as well.
When we talk about young people, sometimes the idea of cost also goes hand in hand with those conversations. Do you think, how much of a barrier to entry do you think cost is?
I think it's a big barrier. So one of the commitments we made at Watershed is to keep a very reasonably priced young people's ticket offer. Used to be £5, it's gone up a little bit now. I think it's £6.50. But and we've done it in a way that's very flat and simple, because the other feedback we had from focus groups we've done with young people is the offers are so convoluted and complicated. So just keep it simple. learn from like big brands like McDonald's or something like that, and just keep it simple. And then we're doing other things as well, like we've started a Saver Monday to try to kind of have a clear message that on a Monday you can come for £6 to the venue if you're young, but other people can as well through different routes. So yeah, keeping the message simple about ticketing, because it's, yeah, there's so many like hidden costs and booking fees and so on. I think just trying to be as transparent as possible with customers.
And I think the reality is also quite mixed, because the premium formats are very, very popular amongst young audience in France, and they are ready to pay 20, 25 euros to go see a film in IMAX, in 4DX or something like that, because it's an experience, and that's what you say, you live something special. And sometimes we have young audience saying, okay, but cinema is really expensive, but they are not aware that in the independent cinema next to the big cinema chains, you have tickets that are really low. The average price in France is above €7 a ticket, which is quite low. And if you have either a subscription, a loyalty system, or you buy 5 tickets at a time, you have really low prices. So again, the problem is to have people know, and you were talking about transparency, about the tariffs and the cost. If you achieve to get the right message on the costs, I think this shouldn't be an issue, because it's really not that expensive compared to many other night outs they can access to.
We're still probably the cheapest art form. Yeah,
exactly.
So I can add, we don't know about pricing, we haven't researched this yet, but what we ask people who use our app after the film screening is, how would you rate your experience in general? Like, how did you like the app, and how did you like the barrier-free version? And a lot of times they are saying, like, I had a great experience, but I want more subtitles and more audio description. So this is what we commonly see. They are just asking for more accessibility.
We've talked about the different types of intervention, but I'm curious about the timing of this intervention. You know, there's so much choice available for audiences at home now. Do you think distributors and exhibitors have fully reckoned with how much more considered that decision is to go to a cinema? And are we still marketing, you know, as if that competitive landscape hasn't really changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the UK there's a lot of films coming out. We're a 3-screen cinema. This is the reality for the filmmakers in the room. We have 3 screens. There's about 10 to 15 films being distributed every week in the UK. And that's in addition to lots of self-distributed films, local people wanting to do events with us. So our programmer, I should have said that, our programmer, who's only 25 years old, which is probably helping with our audience profile, has a really tough time to try to sort of, you know, make those things work. And then our marketing team have an even tougher time, because our programmer is trying to put a lot of films into the schedule to try to kind of hit different audiences, keep the distributors happy as well. We want to support these films. We know we're often the only cinema in Bristol that will be showing a lot of these films. But yeah, then when it comes to the marketing end of things, it's really challenging, because we're just asking them to do too much. And if the distributors haven't really thought of that more localized element of the campaign, you can have a great campaign that's focused on the opening week in London with, you know, posters everywhere. There's no posters in Bristol, very rarely. Some distributors are starting to invest, but there's very little visibility for the films outside of London. So we're having to work really, really hard to make that happen. And yeah, I mean, I think more thought going into localized campaigns is really good. Closer collaboration between distribution and exhibition. We're doing a scheme at the moment with another 6 cinemas across the UK that are quite similar in profile, like GFT, Showroom, QFT, the Depot, and so on. and we're trying to sort of have joint conversations with distributors about some of the smaller titles that they might be bringing out, or titles that have potential but could just drop out. And we're working together to try to sort of influence the campaign, discuss the campaign plans, also make a joint ask about match investment from the distributor into social media at the local level. And then other sort of innovations that have come through chats and collaboration. So we've been doing discovery emails as a group of venues, which is sending the trailers to our customers in a kind of discovery email. So it's not about selling tickets, and it's just more of a game. You know, it's like rate the different trailers, and then we retarget the high raters of some of those films. And yeah, it's a fairly new pilot initiative. We worked on films like Flow, Julie Keeps Quiet, and more recently Sirat. And on Sirat, our group of venues took 16% of box office in the UK, which is significant. And we did lots of comparative data which showed that there was a significant uplift from the collaboration and us working together on that initiative. So it's great. The BFI are putting a lot of investment in P&A through the Audience Fund, and a lot of distributors are benefiting from that. But we're still sometimes, I think for us, the distributors that really invest in local impact producers, or think about giving the cinema some money to do something at the local level, are getting much better results.
Yeah, I cannot agree more on that. I think it's really, really important. And to answer your question, I think the two things that are changing in the way the distributors and in a way exhibitors are marketing the films. I was talking about awareness. So this is something you cannot build on a last week basis. You have to build it throughout times, and it's quite difficult for exhibitors to work on this awareness for months before the release, and especially regarding the amount of release you have every week. So this is one point where distributors and exhibitors really need to work together to reach the local community really in advance of the release of the movie, so that when the movie arrives in the cinema, people are already ready to embrace it. And the other thing which is changing is, there is more and more content, so you cannot raise awareness and to have everyone know everything that is released. So you need, in a way, to focus and to target the right group. Of course, I don't say that the distributors has to just forget and just focus on one group, but your first area of interest is to target the right group which will respond to your marketing campaign. And you cannot do if you are, of course, Disney, or if you are releasing a Star Wars, you can speak to anyone and you have to really massive campaigns. But apart from that, you have really to have your resources focused, for the majority of your resources, focused on the right group to address.
I would completely echo that. Sometimes we get pitched, I won't name any names, but we get pitched a clearly queer movie, for instance, where the distributor doesn't want it to be presented to the audience as a queer movie. And you just think, well, you're kind of missing out, because we can work with loads of partners at the local level. We'll also get a general audience coming to it, but not being frightened of like hitting different audiences and using different images, perhaps for different audience groups as well. That can make a difference. But the early awareness, I think, is a massive piece. My advice to like distributors would be, don't think you've got to like wait till all your assets are created to contact the cinema. Like, we have a coming soon page on a cinema. We have, we can tease things, but if we don't have the materials, that's not great. And that really applies to audio description and descriptive subtitles materials. We often find out just the week before that we have those materials, which allows us no time to promote those screenings. So we've created a whole like separate list for deaf and disabled communities, so they know we will tell them, but it's at the last minute, which is not good.
Yeah. So for you, just for your understanding, we give access to cinema through a software with our app. And what MADDY is talking about, she gives access in her cinema with hardware, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Or with open accessible screenings for all.
Open screenings,
Just don't mix it up.
Yeah,
It's
no.
totally different systems. So what we realized is that so we produce material for the industry to promote their movies accessible with audio description and closed captions. And then there were exhibitors saying in Germany, like, I don't think there are blind people or deaf people in my community. And we're like, yeah, but do you know? No, I don't know. So do you want to try? And then when they advertised it, they realized, okay, I realized there was an association even next door, and not next door, but very close. So it's just, the awareness that you are talking about, we need to create awareness for the industry first. So that's why we are here talking. Thank you, Sylvia, for inviting me to talk about this. And then second, to continue with this awareness through the whole, to all our communities. Because accessible cinema is really in demand because, as I said, the emails we get is always like, I want to see this movie, where are the subtitles? I want to see this movie, where are the audio descriptions? And so we need to, how do you say in English? To make this possible.
Before I throw it open to the audience, I just have one question that I'd like to kind of go down the line with. What's the single, no pressure, but what's the single biggest thing that you feel the industry needs to do better to grow audiences over the next 5 years?
Honestly, like for independent cinemas, if you're talking about the independent film ecosystem, we need to still be here. And I don't want to be dramatic, but I am being dramatic. We need to invest in cinemas. There's a lack of capital development in the UK specifically for independent cinemas. There's a need for more investment in infrastructure, technology, sustainability. And unfortunately, the focus of a lot of the funding is on projects. And that's also very important. And we really, really welcome that support. But I think if we want to become more sustainable in the future, we really need to look at buildings. We are the shop window for filmmakers, not just a shop window. We're the door in for a lot of filmmakers. First time they might experience film. I think it all starts with the cinema, and I would say that.
Yeah, for me, what is really the key for the next years is the collaboration between exhibitors and distributors on any topic. And for the moment in France, and I'm not sure if it's the case in any other territories, but the general ambience between them is really bad, and it's going really bad. And when we tell, for example, exhibitors, you have to share your data so that distributors can work on it, it's getting even more difficult to convince them because they are afraid that a distributor will use it to in their negotiation, their booking negotiations, for example, which is totally not the case because the distributor does not access the data itself. You don't have any data on the particular show or thing like that. But we see that there is it's not really easy to have them work together. Exhibitors think that the marketing is the distributor's job. They don't have to intervene in that. So this is really what we are trying to do, and I think it's really, really important in the forthcoming years that distributors and exhibitors understand that they are on the same boat and that they need to work together, to have this famous awareness rise and have the people really still want to go and push the door of a theater to discover a movie.
Yeah, of course I'm going to say to discover audiences with sight loss or hearing loss because, as I said, it's a huge audience, and to make offers for them really can open up these communities. So, for instance, the cinema industry is working well for us in France or in Germany and some other territories with the distributing companies. They're really helping to promote this, most of them or some of them. And what we are going to contribute is now we are asking people after their screening, how did you like the movie? How did you like the barrier-free version? But in the future, we are also going to ask them, how many people did you come with? So that we can have more data. Like, were you alone or with 2 people, 3 people? And then also, did you buy something in the cinema, so that we also have more data about the purchase in cinema, so to highlight the relevance in different aspects. So that's at least what we are going to contribute.
Thank you. I'm going to throw it open to the audience now. I think there's a roaming mic. There it is. The gentleman in the second row.
Hello, I'm William, and I'm the founder of the Human Made Mark. Against the tidal wave of generative AI, we celebrate and certify the fact a film has human artists behind the camera and in front of the camera. This is a question for MADDY. Do you think there's an opportunity for cinemas to kind of pitch themselves as a sanctuary for human artistry when we're inundated with AI images on social media? You mentioned this great point about like it's a beautiful break from your phone for 2 hours. But obviously now we're just inundated with AI imagery. But what's great about cinema, it's still a celebration of human craft.
That's definitely going to give me food for thought. We're kind of in the middle of implementing an AI strategy for the cinema. So there's a policy on our cinema, if you want to have a look at it, and we are really sort of conscious of the potential impact on AI on a lot of our work and our relationship with audiences as well. So at the moment we've been focusing more on our comms material. I'll tell you a funny little story. We were nominated for the BIFA Awards, and we did a campaign and we got accused of using AI in our campaign. And so we didn't. We actually used an independent designer that we've been working with for years. And we ended up doing a whole sort of show and tell story of how the design came about to our audience, and how much we care about working with designers. But I hadn't thought of it in terms of the actual films that we're showing on screen, so that's something we'll need to think about. But on the whole, as a company, we're really conscious about if we are going to use the AI, it needs to be for assistive uses. We need to be very intentional about it. We're not really interested in generative AI for our own purpose. We will write our own copy. Our comms team, do a really good job of communicating with our audience in a way that's very personal and human. But yeah, that's a really interesting point. I'll take that back to the ranch.
Thanks.
Hands up for any other questions? Yes, over there.
Hello, my name's Zach. I'm currently a master's student. I'm interning for Reason 8 Films. I think I met you, Vicky, when you were having the meeting with Anna. My question is actually for MADDY and for THIERRY in terms of exhibitors. So as somebody who's a young student and chronically online, I do see people talking a lot online about exhibitors and cinemas possibly opening themselves up for live sports games. So for example, the World Cup, and maybe that being a new way to kind of drum up new revenue for exhibitors and kind of keeping them alive. As exhibitors yourself and people who own them, do you think that would kind of be like a cool way to kind of bring more people towards the cinema, which is kind of opening yourselves up, for example, like the World Cup and showing games and selling tickets and that sort of way? And do you think that'd be a cool idea? But yeah.
I love to hear that you're chronically online. We actually just did a partnership with a London-based festival, which I think they're called Chronically Online. They worked with some young people from Bristol, some young programmers, to put on a whole screening of materials from the Contemporary Archive collection of the BFI and from online. So it was things like viral clips from the 90s. It was absolutely brilliant, the screening. I went along to it, and it was so funny. We got such a good audience response that we're really going to look at that type of alternative content. Some of it was very local content as well, and we had some of the sensations, people that went viral for saying something really stupid. They were actually in the cinema, which was great fun. In terms of alternative content, like I said, with 10 to 15 films coming out each year, it's not like we're short of content. Yeah. So, do we want to start showing loads of football and squeezing out the independent films even more? Yeah. I personally, as the head of film, have been sort of resisting that a little bit, where we have made some good inroads is around National Theatre, because there's some really interesting connections in terms of audiences and casting, and that's brought us a different audience. So we've started doing that in the cinema. We also have like different types of spaces in the building which are not the cinema. So like sometimes we show the rugby in the cafe and bar, but we won't show it in the cinema. So yeah, I mean, we are looking, we've done music stuff as well. That's been a better fit with our sort of cultural commitment. So we showed Stop Making Sense, the Talking Heads live concert. We did that in a cinema, and then we noticed people were like moving around so much. We're like, okay, let's do a stand-up screening. So we did a kind of like gig screening of Stop Making Sense, which was packed. It was like being at a gig. It was absolutely amazing. So yeah, it's something we definitely look at. And National Theatre, just going back to like the business side of it, generates a lot of income for us because we can charge premium prices. People that come to the theatre like to drink expensive wine as well, we've noticed. So we're not going to say no to that. But then it's like looking at how can you get those people coming to see an independent film as well. So we're looking, really looking at putting out trailers in front of that, putting slides in front of those shows that say come back to the cinema. Don't just come back to the theatre, come back to see other things.
Yeah, exactly. I think what is really interesting with this type of content is, of course, you can get new audience that never goes to the theatre come, and then, and I speak for my perspective, then you get data from these people, and then you can reach them back and say, okay, you've gone to the theatre to see that football game or a concert and things like that. Here is something new.
The Maradona film.
Yeah, for example. And you can reach them back with a new type of content. And for example, in France, there was a huge success on from a YouTube creator called Kaizen, which climbed the Everest, and it brought young people that had never went to the theater before, and we have been able from various titles afterwards to reach them back and to use this data to attract them again and to have them discover something else than what they were going to see at first at the cinema. So it's very interesting. But again, you have to balance this kind of content to the first mission of the cinema.
I think we've got time for one more question.
Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you for the talk. I wanted to ask you, when, let's say, for an independent film, how important is the online sort of marketing strategy? Because if we look at the space now, I mean, most people, they spend their time on YouTube, on Instagram. YouTube is the biggest streaming channel, right? So people watch podcasts, they watch, entertaining clips on Instagram. So for a project, do you look at this sort of strategy as well? Like I run a production company as well for social media, branded content. So we have the capability of making a lot of, content for social media. And also, maybe we can send the cast to the podcast. So I don't mean like big talk shows, but online talk shows, online podcasts, which also gather a big audience. So how important do you think is that sort of channel of marketing nowadays?
Well, it's it's really important for independent titles, and even more when it can be used to target people. I was always saying, because I would say the more independent and the smaller is the movie, the more you have to reach a niche audience that will be interested by this movie. So digital tools and digital media is the best way to reach a special niche. So it's even, we can see from our perspective that our tools are even more efficient for small independent movies rather than a big Super Mario title, which is anyway visible for every people in France. So yes, independent distributors are more and more working and investing in digital content and in digital tools to reach their audience and to create content really done for special groups and special needs, and adapt the content to the group they need to reach. So it's yes, I think it's really a key to their again my favorite word, but to the awareness of the title and to reach the specific audience they need to reach.
Sorry, I know there are many more burning questions out there, but I'm afraid we've reached the end of our time. Can you please join me in thanking our wonderful guests this afternoon? Thank you very much.